who is a member of the CSM, right? That's right, right? That moment when you're not sure about anything. Anywho. No? Man. Is the primate still useless after this update? It is. It gained a new hold. It got buffed. He was though, right? Like I'm not thinking about a totally different my ADHD is kicking in. Who am I thinking about? Who's the head of Brave? Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. Okay. So it is who I was thinking about, right? So this is T2 salvage drone guy, right? This is classy suit dude. Man. Somebody's gonna clip this and show it to him. I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so bad with names. Anyway, I'll confess. Dunk Dinkle and Dirk McGurk are two names that not only interfere with each other in my head, but disrupt my confidence on either of their names ever, because I always think that there might be a third. Anywho, now that we got this far, he says, I spent a lot of time on the test server listening to others, etc. But he's no longer on the CSM. But this was the primate buff. He took credit for it because that was one of the things he ran on. I remember that. Okay. Here are my thoughts. Opportunities exist for more resources to hit the economy, but it creates negative effects. Kind of curious for him to go into that. Increases time, effort of resource gatherings, runs counter to making less resources less scarce. This is specifically saying like, well, what good is more resources if it takes longer for you to get them and process them? That doesn't actually make more because your throughput is reduced. The basic hits per hour metric for most players in resource gathering appears to be going down. Definitely true on its highest end. Not sure on its lowest end. Mix of good changes are included alongside the highly controversial nerfs. This is very true. These changes will not make the average player feel like it's a new age of prosperity. This is yet remains to be seen. I tend to view EVE gameplay in terms of enjoyable time effort. In other words, am I having fun? Am I having fun to find the playstyle I enjoy rewarding? This is one of the things I find very interesting about this whole discussion, because it goes back to the whole idea of like grindy MMO, which is that EVE is actually full of things that are inherently grindy, that are not fun in the classic sense. But the fun comes out of some meta context of it, or the meaning of it, or putting together, clicking the button for your industry isn't fun, but working your way through the problem is satisfying. So it's not always about fun. And EVE has always been one of those games that not only doesn't demand something to be fun, because there's a lot of things that are not fun that are basically work, which CCP the game kind of accepts. In fact, I've seen this before, this argued that certain gameplay shouldn't be improved because if it was more fun or less painful to do it, then like the fun or pain of it is part of the balancing factor of it, that the pain is the point. I don't know if I always agree with that, but I find it interesting because I've always said that mining is the fishing of EVE. If you're doing it with your buddies on the weekend with a beer in your hand and shooting the shit, then it's fun. If you're doing it by yourself and or for your paycheck, then it is tedious, dangerous, and unrewarding. Or potentially unrewarding, I should say. So I need somebody to be able to look me in the eye and tell me that Rockwell mining as it is right now is fun. because I don't see this as being, and even if it was, then more roqual mining should be more fun. What this really is that I want to get through my bullshit work faster so I can get to the thing I want to do, the fun thing, usually PvP or whatever. So I don't know if this like undermines anything or anything like that, but I find that a very interesting distinction where it's the difference between, is this activity fun, or is the resources I acquire from it quickly and efficiently the thing that lets me then go do the fun? Because those two problems have different solutions, right? Like if you give them more rewarding ways of making resources quickly and then force them to abandon their old crappy ways, then if they go and like make a ton of money, like if there is some other method that allows them to get the ISK that they wanted, like the Abyss, for example, right? If people moved from missions to the Abyss, that is a much more active gameplay style that also gives you ISK back very quickly, especially at its higher tiers. So that's just one example, but I guess my point is that the fact that we have to do work in order to do the fun thing may be part of the problem, not the assumption that it should be that way, and therefore I should be able to make my money as faster so that way I can get it out of the way faster. But that the act of the ISK making itself could be fun or rewarding. Okay. Does playing Eve hit those dopamine triggers that keep people coming back? Yeah, dopamine. The dopamine hits, exactly. But that comes from, autonomy, mastery, purpose, etc., especially long terms. You might have your own metrics, but IMO Eve does not feel rewarding. It is failing to achieve its purpose. So again, fun and rewarding are two technically different things, but both are important for why you might want to keep playing a video game. It has been argued that CCP needs to make... By the way, the reason why I'm getting into this so much is because, like, back in 2014, when I was trying to get my friend into the game, he had all the capability of doing it. We were both software developers, so, it wasn't a money issue or anything like that. In fact, he even got a copy of it. He just never played it. And when I was talking to him about it, and I told him all these cool things, and I showed him this was like BTEC R happened while I was talking to him about this stuff. And he just looked me in the eye and he said, well, but is it fun? Is it fun to play the game? And why is it fun? And seriously, that question has stuck in my craw for 6 or 7 years now. It has been argued that CCP needs to make these changes to put in the handles to be able to adjust the economy as needed, and these are necessary pains. It's not only necessary pains, but it's also new career path, right? Reprocessing was a thing that you just clicked once, and compression was just a thing that you clicked and did, and reprocessing was just a bunch of skills that you trained just to be able to reprocess those rocks, and it really wasn't visible to anybody. And now they're making the act of like being a reprocessor and a compressor, like that support role of secondary, there's the mining of the resources, but then there's the processing of the resources, and that being its own step that has its own profession tied to it, as it were. That's different than just making things harder. Like, again, you don't necessarily have to do it, but maybe somebody has to. Maybe you'll have multiple roque walls now, one person doing compression rolls and the other thing, whatever. That's why I was talking about my choices for how to balance it earlier, is because the secret is to let it feel rewarding, not just be rewarding. There's an allegory to consider. Maybe many have heard the story of how to boil a frog. You put the frog in the pot and slowly increase the temperature until the water is boiling and the frog doesn't notice the slow change. CCP's recent approach is to first boil a pot of water and then throw the frogs in. I find this hilarious because of how many times in the past CCP has been accused of boiling the frog. Like prior to 2019. Like, oh my God, that's what we heard all the fucking time. Whenever anybody complained about any small change, they're like, but they're boiling the frog. And so to hear that reversed is kind of interesting. The one thing I would ask about this is, again, is disruption the point, right? It isn't just a matter of rebalancing things. It's not just about having a system that sustains itself in the future and that like how the system works long term, but it's also about the short term impact, the disruption, the chaos, the shifting of things, the opportunities that those shifts create within a dynamic game. That is potentially the point. Again, may not necessarily be great. Not everything is good. And, you know, wounds can hurt. People get lost. But ultimately, I think that it's important to remember that, as I think I said on Talking Stations, like this, if you were a real life government managing a real life economy, you would want to make slow changes and be very careful about what you say and what you do, and be as, you know, as careful as possible about what is communicated in order to make sure that everything remains nice and healthy and calm as possible for everyone for the entire transition, because lives are on the line and it's real life. In Eve, or in a video game, that chaos is the excitement, right? And people can fail out. People can lose all of their money. Their entire investments in heroic walls can be lost. And tomorrow they can pick themselves up and do it again without it being the same sort of impact as a real life disruption. So you can't necessarily apply like real life ideas about how to make these kinds of change happening to a video game when a certain amount of the disruption may be the plan. This is one of my main resource doubling. This is one of my main positive aspects of the changes. Increasing the amount of raw minerals available is always welcome. Resources are not dynamic yet, but the positive step towards allowing more wealth to find its way into the wallets of players. However, the addition of waste and lossy compression reduces overall ability of resources significantly. So this is a big piece of it, right? Because let's assume that like a certain percentage of the people are using Tech 2 modules, which is 30% reprocessing. So let's say it averages out that like on total, every single mining laser running at the same time is like 70% efficiency, right? So that means that there's still 30% more resources in the world extracted for the same like belts being pulled down. Now, this changes resource availability, not resource throughput, which is important. An important distinction. Not important to necessarily do that, but an important distinction to make, right? So like there is 30% more rocks out there to mine, but you still have to mine them. The changes are complicated and there are many conflicting changes, so that they don't simply mean the end of scarcity. That's true. For example, my friend Angry Mustache reminds me, the elimination of minerals from R4 moons make them basically not worth mining and continues to increase the logistics need. This is super not true, man. R4 moons are super valuable. In fact, arguably, the rocks coming out of the R4 moon is one of the most valuable pieces of the industry changes at the moment. Or at least it was for a long time. This might change things. But also remember that like R4 moon goo, high-sec moon goo will not be able to be just compressed willy-nilly. You're going to have some sort of weird scheme to get it compressed and moved if you want to do that. And you can't react it in position. So there's a lot of like, there's a lot of considerations to R4 moon mining, but no, actually Jita chat, resource doubling sounds like Jita. Yeah. If you give me all of your rocks, we'll double them. Yeah, I don't agree with this. In fact, I would say that this definitely probably increases the value of those moons. So the pyrite and Mexilon, I always call those slag, right? That they just make, it makes it so that you have effectively an unlimited supply of those two products coming into the world. One of the oft frustrated with the new industry changes regarded the planetary interaction materials. The inclusion of bulky P1 materials was a particular pain point. The new plan reduces the dependence on P1 materials, but it's difficult to predict whether or not this will bridge the construction price of capital ships down significantly. With such a large multivariable change to the resource gathering, it is not possible to make accurate calculations. So here's the thing. More R4 moon goo and more reactions means more RCFs and other pieces like that, which also will bring down the prices of capital core temperature regulators and therefore capital core or capitals themselves. Just now, the price of capital core temperature regulators will have to go down quite a bit before they're reasonable to make capitals on the old rate again. But I kind of want to talk about that later. In addition of specialized hangers to allow changes hit everyone. So where's the problem? Well, it actually doesn't hit everybody because, you know, people that only have access to T1 stuff create 100% waste, and people that have access to better stuff create less waste. In addition of specialized hangers to allow easier hauling of resources are welcome changes. Sure, I don't know. This is one of those ones that I don't feel the positive of the change yet, but we'll see. Commonly used for short hauling runs where freighters were impractical, this change rounds out the industrial line and makes life a little easier for players. I mean, like I'm saying, I'm sure that this makes sense. And this moon ore one is going to hopefully make it so that moving that non-compressed moon ore to where you're going to do your reactions may be easier. My beloved Primate is now has an excited future ahead. I mean, it's a stretch. Welcome, Joey. Okay. Now, lossy compression is not a bad idea itself, but complexity is a bit overwhelming. Don't mind the complexity of T2 and T3 industry for fun, but I was a bit baffled at how it works. Part of the problem here is the naming conventions, right? So it's really, somebody was asking, like, why are there so many of these modules? And it's really simple, right? Like, there's a module for each of the quality bands of ore, because each of those quality bands, hold on a second, Valamir just got killed for, y'all need to put spaces between your after your periods. That's Valamir's message. I want to make T2 my most resource hauler. I agree with something along those lines. Okay, so it is really simple, but it doesn't seem simple because of the naming conventions it currently has. So each of the reprocessing, so the reprocessing skills got compressed down into basically just the bands of quality, right? Common, uncommon, rare, just like the moon ore, right? So I think there's like 5 for rocks, the 3 or 4 for moon ore, whatever. And so now there's a compressor for each of those skills, where it used to be that you refined and all that stuff based on that one thing, you know, each individual rock's skill, and you had to have the correct crystal that required the correct reprocessing skill. Now, those reprocessing skills feed into these compressors. And the other piece to that is that, or another thing to think about that is that within any given belt, you probably won't see too many different kinds of rocks. Such that if you have only one compressor, you can compress the majority of the rocks. And if you have, you can also have multiple compressors. So if you have a belt with both uncommon and common ore in it, you can have one of each that's compressing both. It might be worth thinking about having it so that compressors can compress other ore for a lower rate, such that you don't feel like you're completely put out. But let's call this what it is. CCP wants it so that you have to reconfigure, and that reconfigurement, if you're moving to dramatically different stuff, right? If I'm moving from common ore to rare ore, or if I'm moving from moon ore to ice, I need to reconfigure, and that reconfigurement isn't trivial, right? That is the point. And so when you complain about things like the size of the modules and all that stuff, like, on the one hand, yeah, it probably sucks for those modules to be that big, and maybe they even could be looked at. But the whole point is that you have your loadout, and it's good for certain things. And if you want to maximize stuff, you need to flex it around. I think that it would be better if the refineries, or the compressors, were able to compress the wrong ore just less efficiently. Or, yeah, a universal compressor, an ore faction compressor that can compress any kind of ore for a slightly lower, yeah. Or you can have 2 Rourke walls, and then they can refit off of each other. Or, well, the thing is that even the refitting requires you to have these giant modules alongside you. And that brings me to the one thing that is 100% true, and I talked about this yesterday. If the ore pulls from the cargo hold, that means that there's this really fiddly bit like relationship, which I think he talks about here too. Yeah. For Orca and roll-call compression, the process itself is more frustrating. Move the ore from the fleet hangar into the cargo bay, load module, wait for module to complete, move compressed product out, move more into the cargo bay, do this for a while, and it's a lot of monotony. That is awful. And again, as I said yesterday, if this is what you have to do for technical reasons, you need to make this more rewarding. You need to make this generate resources or something, because this is an active task. This is as much as much activity as mining is. Why is mining in a Hulk generating all this resources and compressing in an Orca destroying, or compressing in a Rorqual destroying resources? Like, this is a problem. You could argue that just like this is basically, like one of the things I thought about was like, the monkey paw thing is like orcas wanted to be able to do AFK activities, and true AFK activities means you touch it every couple of minutes, right? Like that's really what AFK mining usually means in practice. And so you're like, this is their way of making it so they have an AFK activity. And like, we can all tongue in cheek laugh at that, but if you're also destroying resources, and taking fuel and making it tedious, there's too much about this that feels bad, even if all the numbers work out. I would say readjust the numbers, such as making this feel good, right? Either like change how much ore is out there, how much is reprocessed, just accept that there's 3% more minerals being created, whatever. Wait, hold on. Does the reprocessor not take fuel? You're right. It's just the Indy core that takes fuel. Nope, you're right. I'm dumb. Yeah, it doesn't take any fuel to be in the compressor. I guess I was assuming that like the core would be running at the same time, which actually, honestly, the compressor and the core ship would probably be, you'd want them to be two different ships. I guess my point is that these pilots in general are consuming resources, destroying resources, and yet we want them to be happy with what they're doing. So, yeah, it just, wow. For Orca and Rorqual compression, the process itself is frustrating. Yeah. Besides the clicking, the time durations are painful. People are going to... The one thing that they could do is dramatically increase the normal cargo hold of these ships, so that way you don't have the problem of this tedium. Also, wouldn't the module reload automatically, or do you have to load the module individually each time? I would assume that if you just have a pile of rocks in your ship hangar, it'll just pull from it, right, until it's gone. So it's not as bad, but like it's still pretty bad. Besides the clicking, the time durations are painful. People are going to go from instant compression to this, waiting several minutes for each cycle. Again, I see this as being something that the Orca or Rorqual will be like doing during the operation. But again, if it's going to take time, it should be valuable. And not just make it easier to haul, but actually like get something out of it. At scale, it becomes unrealistic to do straightforward tasks like mining a moon and compressing it. Asteroid, ore, gas, and ice will likely be done in Athenors to avoid the time and risk, unless someone living in extremely safe regions. It's a good question of like, how vulnerable are these ships while they're doing these things? The variety of different compression modules is daunting. For the Orca, there are 28 different modules. For the Rorqual, there are 38. I mean, yeah, but there's a lot of different guns. Well, that's a terrible excuse. That seems like a lot. That might be worth looking into. But I mean, like, there's all of the ore types, all of the ice types, all of the moon goo types, and then there's double that for Tech 1 and Tech 2, right? Like, so there's 14 different types. I mean, without making it into 4 or whatever, I just feel like this particular concern is one of those concerns that feels bad on paper, but will make more sense once it's in practice, right? Like, Yeah, you don't always get to, you don't have the correct jammer unless you brought the correct jammer and have it fit. Yeah, you don't, you know what I mean? Like, you have to have the correct thing for the correct situation. And this does that. Better than making them rigs, man. The overall take is a lot of complexity. Simple change to lossy compression. Lossy compression is hard enough pill for most to swallow. Adding this elaborateness to the actual in-game, in-space compression process may make it an unusable feature by most miners. I agree. And that's why I said, like, change it from compression to refinement. So you have, like, I know that they already use refining, but you have refining and reprocessing, which are both like two different words for the same thing. But like stage 1 refinement ends up with refined or purified Veldspar, which is compressed Veldspar. But if you do it in an Orca or Rockwell, you get additional resources for the same amount. Again, if there's some sort of reward or payoff mechanism, see? Oh, sorry. I've got this little like fidgety thing in my hand. Some slight machine payoff of something found in the compression process. That's actually a really interesting idea. Have a different kind of resource, right? So like it compresses down to the thing and have the extra thing just be like an extra thing that spits out that is then used for other stuff, right? I don't know what that means. I don't know what it turns into. Maybe it could just be R4 Moon Goo to turn it into more RCF or whatever. I don't know. But I like the idea of like having a secondary output, right? So like rather than it be like useless, it crits to, it spits out hypernet. So it spits out Bitcoin. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So the skills map. Yes. Randomly every 100 cycles of one of these compressors generates a unique NFT that is then Eve mailed to you. Done. Ship it. The skills map to the modules, but again, there are lots of skills to train. It's true, but in practice, you're only going to need the ones for what you're doing, and then you're going to need to reconfigure when you move into a new context. Omar's eyebrows just wrote, calm down. Easy there, Scooter. Mining waste was not a bad idea, but the end result is counterproductive as it gets lower SP players involved with mining and gets more people in space. Yeah, I agree. And in fact, here's my suggestion to you. Ready? Here's a good fix for it. Let's give ventures and actually all mining frigates a mining waste bonus on their frigate skill, such that ventures don't waste resources because they're not using strip miners. They're using little tiny precision lasers that don't waste a whole bunch of resources. That's a good idea. In fact, actually, one of the ideas that came up earlier was go even further and show that, like, have it be so that a venture, because when you mine it, you can see the waste kind of coming off of it. Have it so that, like, if a venture's right there, it can hoover up the excess and grab it. Yeah, I think a waste mitigation process, or having just in the same way that like a salvager, like a Nubro will come and be a salvager in your missions, and therefore will generate extra value because you can't be bothered to salvage all your missions because that's time. In the same way, a venture could like help you, like could be like the little fish on the side of the shark, right? Like they couldn't get the resources themselves, but they can feed off of the little scraps that you leave behind. Or a drone. Yeah, a drone could do it. Eve players are min-maxers, and the proposed design leads to a natural path of basically excluding as much waste as behavior as possible. I disagree, because again, this has to do with situations. If you care about the maximum amount in the belt, or like getting every single tiny resource that you can get out of this potential rocks, then yes, you would worry about it. If you don't give a shit, if you're going to mine for the next hour and you know for a fact that you will not consume all of the rocks in that amount of time, then who gives a fuck about waste? You don't. Not even a little bit. Well, okay, maybe as I went into yesterday, there is small effects on waste, like for instance, when you're getting to the bottom of a rock. But you could actually fix that by making waste come out second instead of first. Force people to work together, no drone. I agree on that. Maybe, but like I do like the idea of like having a venture that just sits there and like, hey guys, I want to hang out too. Okay, cool. It's like the tackle of the fleet, right? It's like, oh, it's the cute guy that hangs out with everybody, but makes it all possible for everybody else. Yeah, it's really for R64s, and that's my whole point. Different scenarios have different priority stacks, and that's why I like this. Because yeah, Eve are min-maxers, which is why I like different solutions for different areas. What is min-max depends on your priorities, not a mathematical equation. This means the rich get richer and the poor get kicked from the mining fleets as Tech 1 modules. Low SP players simply waste too much of the valuable rocks. Two things. First of all, if you can use a Tech 1 module, you can use a faction module. Okay? So it doesn't matter how fucking new you are. You can mine with 0 waste if you buy faction modules. But faction modules are expensive. Okay, great. So what you're telling me is your concern is that your nullsec block with R64s or whatever don't want to bring new bros. Pity the new bros that don't get invited to the most expensive, best rocks because they have equipment that's inefficient. Guess what? Maybe those new bros should be mining something else. There's plenty of things for them to be mining as well. There are plenty of people and places that have no care about their waste. Maybe there are other environments that they could work towards. And if they want to mine that extra special, awesome, fucking great stuff, then get a faction miner. It's not that hard. It's not impossible. Okay. This isn't Dunk. This is why I'm upset about this. Okay. Normally, there's the think of the new bro complaint. And often this pearl clutching think of the new bro is a defense by null block people, often who are established, who want to complain about a change and use new bros as a defense. That's one of the reasons why I love the think of the new bro accusation and the pearl clutching, right? Because it literally is just using them as a defense. And in this case, my concern is that this is 100% true, right? Because the key here is that every complaint that you have about new bros and their waste, remember that excavators also have the same waste as new bros. So by complaining about a new bro level of waste, you are actually complaining about excavator waste too. You see? So that's what frustrates me in particular with this exact version of the Think of the New Bros, is because it seems incredibly like that you are simply, man, chat has exploded and I haven't made it big enough. That there is I have a concern that there's a certain amount of these complaints that are concerned about the fictional brand new player who is mining some large group's moon and are now excluded because of the waste. And that's the thing that they were excited about. Like that situation seems so much less likely than just roke walls with excavators are mad that they are now wasting half the supply. That using something besides a roke wall would be efficient. Like that's what it just kind of smacks like that. Again, I'm not saying that about Dunk. He just reminded me of the situation. I think that he's got like legit, like when he says he's concerned about these kinds of things, it's true. And specifically Brave Newbies, for the record, of all of is one of those groups that you would actually expect to see that play out, where you do have very new players within your organization. So like of all the people that can actually legitimately make this complaint, he's one of the people that can do so. But I'm just saying, like, there's a lot, I'm just saying, there's a lot of people where it's like, okay. Also, if you're just showing up or whatever, you're hearing that, I also want to point out that I did talk about how I would fix roke walls earlier, which did address things like waste and stuff. So I'm not saying that roke walls are great. I'm just saying, like, we'll have to see about how much it influences the new bro, because I keep going back to the fact that waste is invisible to the person who doesn't know about it, right? Like the new bro who's just running around mining rocks, he doesn't even know that he's causing waste. It's 100% a social problem or a more advanced problem. It's something that you learn about in order to get better at later. And by later, I mean like not like day 5, not day 2. But again, like if somebody is in null, they should probably be getting into Tech 2 excavators relatively soon. And even if so, if you're mining the best stuff, faction equipment's great. You should maybe do something to be able to get the resources to get that extraction, the faction extractors, so that way you can extract the best resources. Seems to make sense to me. In fact, honestly, this change makes it so that new bros and experienced bros are on the same level because both people need to use faction stuff to get rid of 100% of the waste. Why do we need waste? I feel like I've talked about this already. I feel like waste is kind of opposite of what it should be, but you know, it is designed to add more levels of complexity and different kinds of rewards for progression. Waste is very much almost like the ESS's stuff, where it's like what you burn in waste was never yours to begin with, you know? NPC, that is actually one of the funniest questions, is that NPC miners, how is that going to affect them? And somebody also brought up like missions. The thing about missions is that if they double all the ore in the rocks, and then you mine at 100% inefficiency, then you end up mining exactly the same amount out of the rocks. And that's really all it means, is that like they're doubling all the ore, but if you use the least efficient methods, that doesn't actually get you any extra ore. That's more or less all it is. Waste is a chance on hit. Waste is not 100% guaranteed. Well, that's actually one of the weird things, is that they specify that it is not necessarily guaranteed, but yet the modules that are 100% waste is also 100% guaranteed. Maybe they'll tweak with those numbers to make it so that it's a percent chance for the amount, but it is worth noting that the better stuff is not only better because it wastes less, but it wastes less often. Right? I'm right. It does both, right? Hold on. Let's double check. See, okay. So no, Tech 2 modules waste the same amount, but less often. So there's a 34% chance that you'll waste the same amount as you mined, and a 66% chance, that's not ominous, that you get all of your ore without burning any ore if you use Tech 2 modules. If you use faction modules, then you have no chance of burning ore. And the reason why I'm curious about this is because this is one of those dials that they put in that I really feel should get a little bit more granularity, right? Like, why put in this level of nuance to have it really just kind of default to all the same, right? Really, there's 3 different conditions. This one, and this one, which these 2 are just like this condition again. I feel like you could describe this a lot easier, especially like why even have a waste multiplier? I guess you have the waste multiplier because they're the inefficient one that destroys more per cycle. But like, I feel like this is needlessly complex unless you're going to tweak this in some way. I want to see a pollution index. Ah, yes. Well, wouldn't it be awesome if you mine a whole lot of rocks, then that causes more gas clouds to spawn? All right. Get back to Dunk. The change to make all mining drones create waste is a huge impact to players and industrial support ships, and again reduces the per hour of resource gathering. I agree with this. As I said, I feel like they should either nerf the throughput of the mining through drones, or the waste, not both. And honestly, I lean towards the idea that drones should have the same waste bands as normal mining lasers, such that Tech 1 is 100%, Tech 2 is 34%, and Tech 3 is, faction is 0%. I feel like if you just simply reduce the yield, you can do that. And that way you don't feel like your rogue wall either can not mine or destroy shit. That doesn't feel good at all. I mean, how much rocks are rogue walls going to destroy in their pursuit of helping people, both through their mining and through their compression? Excavators shouldn't be 0% waste. Faction excavators. That's what I'm saying. Like, faction stuff could potentially be 0% waste. I don't even know if there's faction excavators. There probably is, right? Is there? Are excavators already considered faction? Excavators are currently... Oh, well, in that case, maybe they'll need more nuance. Maybe excavators could be just Tech 2. I thought there was like different kinds of excavators. Never mind. But you get what I'm saying. Like, the point is that making excavators 100%, I feel... So like the very people that care the most about the weight of the waste are the people at the high end. Like, think of the new bro argument falls flat with me because new bros aren't giving a shit about their waste. Rogue wall pilots are giving a shit about their waste. So forcing them to have waste on top of these other roles and reduced effectiveness versus other ships, I feel like that's too much. What about mercoxic mining? There are no faction marks. Mercoxid is supposed to be dangerous and risky, which it actually is way more of that now than before. Okay, the change to make the idea of offensive waste mining fleets is raised, but it seems fairly unrealistic that we're going to see this becoming a common tactic. I mean, probably not, but at the same time, I mean, like, I think it's cool. I think that it's an option because striking at your opponent's resources one way or another is a thing to do. If you, like, let's put it this way. You attack somebody's system, right? And you force them all to undock. With the ESS, you can force them to come and defend in order to, before you steal their money. But now, if you, like, crash in, cause them to all dock up, and you can then bring in your mining ships or even just have mining lasers or mining drones or whatever it is on your guys with the inefficient crystals and burn up their ore in front of them. Don't want to come fight me? Fine. Say goodbye to your shit. I think that's fine. That's good. It's a good way of putting pain onto somebody who doesn't want to come and defend their stuff. Because as of right now, all they do is just wait it out. And the entire waste paradigm needs to be flipped in some way that the rich and high SP players can't simply get more ability to dominate resource gathering. I agree with this. They can do that now, just mine it. Right, but the point is that people have asked this for a long time. I want to be able to shoot an asteroid with my gun to just blow up the rock, not mine it. I don't care about the resource. I just want to make that resource not there anymore. The sandbox. If somebody wants to do that, they should be able to do that. In high sec, it causes a suspect flag, so you can't like do it to somebody in Athenor in high sec. Again, an opportunity to create variable ration variable reward. Variable ration variable reward mechanism is something that should be considered. Giving a chance for a lucky waste roll to pop out something valuable would do a lot to soften player resistance. I agree with that so much. In fact, actually, Echoes has this. As you mine and do other things, these extra doodads can pop out, and that in this case, it only provides like lore stuff that then can be turned into the museum for credits for skins and stuff, which is fine, whatever. But the point is that there is like special things that come out when you mine. And I actually really like the idea that like special resources, like a T2 module mining rocks, will actually get not just more resources, but special resources that only the advanced reprocessors could pull out. That's actually kind of interesting. Thank you for the follows, guy, or Ness, and the host, Ligma. Let's see. Hopefully we're getting low on this because I gotta go potty. Mining ship changes. As has been hinted previously, the Porpoise, Orca, and Rockwall are not going to be mining ships going forward. We'll see about that. This is tremendously frustrating to those players who have invested a lot of their effort to flying these ships, to see them purely support ships. Here's the thing. I predict that we will still see Orcas in HiSec, because as it stands, they are still going to be the best. I'm just in a belt and leaving it AFK for a few hours with my drones out and filling up my cargo hold. This doesn't make it not the best at that. It doesn't change that calculus at all. It just makes it so that that person is going to get less resources for letting it be AFK all day. Which one? How did I miss that one? This one? I'm not sure. Sawdeth. Oh, follow. Hey, thank you for that. It's because I wasn't streaming for a long time, and then I'm also now streaming in a totally different time schedule, which I'll be talking about in a few minutes, in a little bit too. Here's what time is it? Yeah, I'm still good. Yeah, because there are still gankers though. Yeah, absolutely. But that's my point. Like, none of this changes the actual calculus of Orca mining in HiSec. They still have exactly the same reasons for wanting to do it, and they have exactly the same threats as before. The one difference is that now they can potentially core, which ironically enough actually helps them, because if they're AFK, they're not going to run away from the gank in time anyways. And the core gives them a little bit of extra tank when they are being ganked. So arguably, this is a survivability buff and a throughput nerf on HiSec Orca mining. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's tremendously frustrating to those players that, although that will also require the heavy water, which is, that might take consideration. This is tremendously frustrating for players that invested a lot of effort into flying these ships. Again, this is not a good reason to not make these changes. If you put a lot of effort into getting into an Orca because you wanted to mine in it, then you did so knowing full well that there are other ships that are designed to be mining ships that the Orca is outclassing for some reason. And, committing into the flavor of the month does not entitle you to be upset when it moves off of that being the flavor of the month, and therefore it's no longer overpowered, right? Did they nerf yes, the drone mining bonuses. Besides, I go over a lot of the changes yesterday. I don't know how many of those exact details I do, but like I said before, as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to go and make yesterday's videos live on YouTube to check out. Saddling these billion-esque ships with the mind-numbing task of sitting on the field to compress materials painfully while command burst cycles endlessly is just no fun at all. This goes back to, this is why I showed that video earlier about me talking about the roll call changes. Because arguably speaking, this description of being on the field, compressing minerals, commands burst cycles cycling, and hoovering in the minerals is exactly the fun, or at least purpose, that the original Rockwall pilots wanted, and the Rockwall was originally designed to support. So one could argue that while you may find endless cycling of these things to be mind-numbing and therefore not valuable, arguably there is a type of person out there that will find that valuable, that lost their gameplay, that may be getting a piece of it back, or CCP thought that they were trying to do that, missed the mark entirely, and end up pissing everybody off. Which, spoiler alert, I actually kind of suspect that this is more likely, given the fact that A, the guy I referenced in my video did leave the game, and B, I'm very sure, almost positive, that this change isn't, he's not going to look at this and be like, yes, this is what I needed to be a Rockwall pilot again. We'll see. This even though this isn't literally true, I feel like this almost falls into like a Star Wars Galaxy situation where, it was one way, you changed it to another way, so that way all the people that like the old way quit, and now you're changing it back, which means all the people who like the new way don't like it anymore. It's playing with fire. It fielded a huge target for hunters and realistic. This is actually this goes back to my question of like, when it comes to compression, how risky is that going to be? But yes, this is what killed that is what killed Star Wars Galaxies. But that was the entire system was overhauled, not just like this would be the equivalent of like the crafting or the actually literally it'd be the difference. It'd be like revamping the gathering system of a game, right? On the one hand, you could totally fuck it up to make it so the gathering is totally not enjoyed anymore, but that's still only one aspect of the broader game, right? Like, players who own orcas roquals or owners of the ships don't justify their build class. But this is also what I talk about in that video too, which is that none of that matters to the person who feels like they've been invalidated by this. Valamir says the NGE ruined Star Wars Galaxy, and I'll always be mad about it. They were also forced to release it 9 months early. Valamir, was that pun intentional? Okay, so if a player owns a roqual or excavators, suck it up, Buttercup, you're SOL. Yeah, exactly. Here's the thing. This statement, whatever you feel about these changes, this statement he's saying is true, or at least the sentiment is true, and that's a problem. I don't care what you do to fix it. Just make it so that being in a roque wall with excavators isn't literally the wrong decision for those players. It's exactly the opposite of what I was saying before, right? Like mechanical superiority, right? Everything has to have a reason to not do it, but everything also has to have a reason to do it. You could, and that's why I was saying, like, if you do want to give all of this waste to excavators, then by God, don't nerf their mining capability. Let it so that roque walls can just hoover an entire moon in like fucking 5 minutes. Who gives a shit? But that it causes, huge amounts of waste. That's fine. But don't do both at the same time, because then you're just saying, haha, sucks to be you. And that's, I mean, like, you don't have to send that message. Small tweaks of the numbers can make it so that it feels rewarding without changing the fundamentals of these mechanics. No, this is the old mining laser animation. That's what mining things, strip miners look like. The most used mining ship, the Procurer, is nerfed. Its role as bait with the capability to fight back removed almost entirely. I'm going to have to look into this because I keep hearing this and I don't understand it exactly. All I saw was buffs to hit points and stuff like that. Somebody needs to explain to me how the Procurer got nerfed. I just don't understand it yet. Oh, they lost a mid? Oh. That's 2 mids? That's my reaction. Live to that. What? That's Procure lost 2 mids. What? Isn't that the skiff? Isn't that the T1 skiff? Okay. This is why that doesn't make sense. This goes back to what I was saying yesterday about the gas bonus on the venture. When it comes to new players, especially, let's actually talk about new players. A new player wants to up their game, right? They have finally made it. Okay, they survived the tutorial. They staggered their way through the career agents. They have gotten their way to the limits of what they can do. They have their venture. They've gone in mind. They've done some level 1 missions. They've figured it out. They feel like they can get it now. Okay, great. I want to mine, but I want to do more than this venture. Both alphas and new players run into the problem of, well, you need to step up, which takes training, which takes time, right? So with a new player, you now need to mine for a certain amount of time, less effectively on top of everything else, or skill inject. And for an alpha, fuck you. You just don't get to. Now, we could argue that alphas aren't supposed to be resource harvesters in the same sort of way, but this really goes into the value of risk versus reward when it comes to resource extraction. There are more dangerous methods of resource extraction, gas hoving and wormhole space, low sec mining, poachfin mining, right? And I've said this for a long time. As a newer player, you don't get to just make more money by getting the cooler stuff and now I make more money. You do it by doing that stuff that's, since you have to use a venture anyways, you might as well go do something that a full venture's load is worth something, right? And that gets them out there and doing the exciting stuff. You want to reward that. So by nerfing the tankability of the Tech 1 miner, and by nerfing the capability of the venture to do this resource extraction, you're just making it so those new bros that are looking for an option for how do I get more out of what I'm doing to just not get it. It's just, I don't know, man. I feel like we should be rewarding resource extractors that are willing to go to the edges. We could argue that the T1 skiff needs to be less than the T2 skiff, so they nerfed it. T2 skiffs are fucking strong. Yeah, I remember when they made scrap metal reprocessing poopy. Okay. Eliminating the gas mining bonus for ventures again removes a good way for low SP players to earn ISK. I swear to God, I didn't set that up on purpose. The rest of the mining ship changes are haphazard, mix of tank nerf. I agree. I think that overall the mining barges changes are just fucking confusing more than anything. I'm gonna pause right here and go potty and wash my hands if Funsui's here. Jesus Christ, you guys. I did yesterday too, just for the record, but either way. I'll be right back. All right, and we're back. We're going to keep going with Dunk Dinkle's Dunk Dinkle's blog post on the mining changes. Should have done like an ad or something during the break too. Darn it. Let's see. They also made Endurance Assault Frigate. I mean, 360 DPS can use a medium pith on as a I mean, that's not terrible. Wait, isn't the Endurance the ice mining one? I remember because it happened a week. Wow, I can get 360 off an Endurance. I wish I could ask CCP devs, why do you hate miners? It's fun. Yeah, I don't know. Given the relation, like, long past are the days of Hulkageddon, I guess. You can make hundreds of millions of ISK doing safe AF combat, but God forbid you make a crumb of ISK mining. Yeah. It's true, but at the same time, there is a concern where, like, the problem is that if they just glut things into the game, if they make it easier to get these resources, it also makes those resources go down in value. So it's weird, right? Like, the harder they make it, the more valuable they make it to do it. So it's not always 100% straightforward. Pretty sure CCP has some devs that do every type of activity, but more of them have moved to doing PvP without replacing the ones that were doing other activities. I'm not sure. I know that they have a very different idea of what the system should be, and they've been working towards it for a while. And people that relied on the old system see this as a problem every step of the way. Generally, yes, but generally we leave procures and orcas alone. I think of all of the things that needed to get punched in the face, it was orcas. Is CCP going to ask you to rebrand the show? As I said, I'm not going to sue if they don't. Okay, so I do have something to say about that again in a little bit. So let's go ahead and keep on going so that way I can finish this up. Man, we've got a lot to do and not a lot of time left. So these changes towards the end of the dev blog are welcome. So condensing reprocessing skills. With reprocessing skills and mining crystals previously specified down to the ore type, there's different, the training skills and crystals, simpler to understand. This actually goes back to those compressors, right? Where on the one hand, the compressor seems very complicated, but that's because they're all new. The idea of the quality bands of ore is just going to be universal now. So it's going to be easier to learn, even though it's more complicated to transition. For those who, with perfect refining characters, it's actually a skill bonanza. A skill bonanza. I love that. As it's a possibility for several million unallocated points to be gained. And for people who have, there's a lot of people who trained into specific reprocessing because they were part of some group that did some sort of thing. And now they're not in that group, that kind of group anymore. So even if they did do reprocessing, now they're reprocessing a different quality of ore. So they might not actually decide to retrain the same stuff. This also, just a reminder right now, everybody who wants to just quickly gain a bunch of unallocated SP, go fucking start training reprocessing skills because they're all being reprocessed or refunded. So that means you can spend the rest of your time up until this expansion or this patch comes out building up just raw unallocated SP. And if you have your attributes right, I would not remap just for this, but maybe implants or whatever, maximize your training. That maximizes the amount that you get back. The mining crystal changes, again, amplify the game's small amount and offer some options not previously available. While avoiding waste in sovereign space is a big issue. If I'm on a high-sec mining character and just want to spend 45 minutes running asteroid belts, the higher yield, higher waste crystals sound pretty good. Oh, right. Okay. So that's actually a piece of this whole puzzle that we haven't actually been looking at, because we've been looking at waste as being like absolutely 100%, but depending on which crystal you use, that can also reduce the waste, right? So it's not actually like 100%, 100%. I'm gonna have to look at what the crystals exactly do. I think the dev team is taking the community reaction seriously and trying to listen to concerns. This is a good thing. We have their attention. The ball is in their court as the CSM and players can offer a look into how the denizens of New Eden would use and abuse their current design. And this is a good point, right? Like, there are absolutely problems in this design, for sure. Even CCP admitted it, or, you know, put it in the dev blog. So this isn't about making it like, this isn't scripture from heaven that we just need to adapt to. This is something that we're going to need to poke at and look at and peel it apart and see what it is. But just reacting to it and just like throwing out the very concepts, that's just not, it's not that you're wrong. It's that that feedback isn't probably going to be valuable, because just not introducing waste is probably not going to be an option. Like, waste was introduced for a very good reason. So how do we capture its reason, get the most out of it without it causing all the poopiness that it is? That's the question. Can I toss a link to the article? Hold on. Oh, can I toss? Yes. And if you're watching this on YouTube, all the links should be down below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, all that stuff. So just again, remember, like, and as Matthew put it, you can adjust the numbers in such a way to make it so that a lot of these things feel rewarding rather than punitive. But there is a big piece of this where CCP is making this change, not as a transition change, but also as a final state change, right? Like, so this isn't about nerfing compression on rocks. This is about establishing a sophisticated compression mechanic as opposed to a simplistic compression mechanic that comparatively reduces the effectiveness. But like a year from now will simply just be a complex system, if that makes sense. It won't be a nerf anymore once the transition is over.